Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Surabhyaya Namaha.
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 Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham bhande Sri Gurum Dinataranam yat kripa tamaham bhande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna.
Hey, Krishna.
Welcome to our Bhagavatam class. Special welcome. So we continue reading from fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 14, entitled The Story of King Vena. We're just in the beginning here, and we are reading text number 4. Sa Arudha Niripa Stana Unadho Sta Vibhutibihi Avamene Maha Bhagan Stabdaha Sambhavitaha Swataha Sa Arudha Nripastana Unadhosta Vibhutibihi Avamene Mahabhagam Stabdha Sambhavita Swataha
Sabda Sambhavita Swataha.
Sa Arudha Nripastana Unadhosta Vibhutibihi Avamene Mahabhagam Sabda Sambhavita Swataha Sa Arudha Nripastana Unadhosta Vibhutibihi Avamene Mahabhagam Sabdha Sambhavita Swataha Saha King Vena Arudha ascended to Nripastanaha, the seat of the king. Anadhaha, very proud. Asta, 8. Vibhutibihi, by opulence. By opulences. Avamene, began to insult. Mahabhagam, great personalities. Stabdaha, inconsiderate. Sambhavitaha, considered great. Swataha, by himself. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Bhakti Swami Prabhupada ki. When the king ascended to the throne, he became all powerful with 8 kinds of opulences. Consequently, he became too proud. By virtue of his false prestige, he considered himself to be greater than anyone. Thus, he began to insult great personalities. Kind of repeat after me. When the king ascended to the throne, he became all-powerful
He became all-powerful
with 8 kinds of opulences.
with 8 kinds of opulences.
Consequently, he became too proud
Consequently, he became too proud
by virtue of his false prestige.
by virtue of his false prestige.
He considered himself
He considered himself
to be greater than anyone.
to be greater than anyone.
Thus, he began to insult
Thus, he began to insult
great personalities.
great personalities.
Purport. In this verse, the word asta vibhu tivihi means by 8 opulences. The king is supposed to possess 8 kinds of opulences. By dint of mystic yoga practice, kings generally acquired these 8 opulences. These kings were called rājarṣis, kings who were also great sages. By practicing mystic yoga, a rājarṣi could become smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest, and could get whatever he desired. A rājarṣi could also create the kingdom, bring everyone under his control, and rule everyone. These were some of the opulences of a king. King Vena, however, was not practiced in yoga, but he became very proud of his royal position nonetheless. Because he was not very considerate, he began to misuse his power and insult great personalities. Translation again. When the king ascended to the throne, he became all-powerful with 8 kinds of opulences. Consequently, he became too proud. By virtue of his false prestige, he considered himself to be greater than anyone. And thus, he began to insult great personalities. So Srila Prabhupada begins by explaining about asta vibhutihi, 8 opulences. And it's interesting, he makes a comparison with the opulences of a mystic yogi. But King Vena was not a mystic yogi. But there seems to be a little overlapping here. The Vedic kings were more than just ordinary kings or rajas, trained in the art of, we call, the art of ruling, or the art of governance, or the art of kingship, rulership. Different names are given. This was acquired, of course, when they received training from early age as a young boy, throughout their teenage years, and so many different books of knowledge are there actually for training someone to become a good administrator. Just like here in India, they have what is it? Those top level officers.
Indian Administrative Service.
Huh?
Indian Administrative Service.
Yeah, IAS.
Yes.
IAS, yeah, right. It's very tough to become IAS. Did anyone ever try here? No. I'm told, I heard. Yeah. Very, very extremely competitive. And that's only one, forget about the mystic aspect, mystic yoga. I don't think that's in the curriculum. But not only was one who actually got this kind of training, he would become very powerful, very learned, how to how to deal with people, how to administer. These are the three main activities of the qualified kings or qualified leaders. They learn the science of protection, giving protection. Giving protection to the citizens, how to protect the kingdom. When we start reading, actually there's many, to protect the kingdom you have to know where to build your fort. Sometimes the fort will be built on the border, sometimes it will be built in the middle, sometimes it will be built on mountains. In Maharashtra there's, King, what's his name?
Shivaji.
Shivaji, yeah, King Shivaji. He had many forts,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah. And that's all described actually in various books, like the Kautilya Arthashastra. Gives a list of where kings would build their fort. That would make it very difficult for people to attack. Sometimes in the middle of a desert, who will go to a desert to fight? You have to go a long distance. There's no water. But so that was one place, desert, in the middle of the desert, or in the middle of the forest.
Here, Shivaji Maharaj had some in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, that's another one. Middle of the ocean. He had, huh?
Yeah, 2 years.
He must have read about Dwarka. Yeah, Krishna shows by building his fort in Dwarka, it was in the ocean. So, it's not so easy to go and fight somebody who's in the middle of the ocean. So there are standard, this is part of the standard science that it's only one small aspect actually, and how they would build the fort also. So many considerations actually. So the training for kings, for Vedic kings, which one can still read about it. Of course, most people are not very inclined to even read about it, what to speak of learning it, because it's quite demanding to learn. Would therefore qualify someone to, as Prabhupada mentions here, to govern or to rule the citizens. Whenever somebody becomes powerful, others who are less powerful have to follow, either by force or by respect and by love. And not only would one learn these different sciences of governance, but also the Vedic kings, and that's a very unique and special feature which we don't find in modern day society. The Vedic kings were also rishis, they were yogis, and some of them definitely developed some of these mystic siddhis. This is what is being asta siddhi, eight perfections that yogis, anyone who practices, can develop because they are they are within everyone actually. So, of course, one of the important points mentioned here was that this King Vena, because he was of a bad nature from birth, due to, as we read before, due to something that happened in the past. It's like karmic reaction coming back to the family. So he was of bad nature from the very beginning, bad character, and we read a little bit of some of the descriptions. He would go to the forest and unnecessarily kill all kinds of animals, and he would even, when he would play with his friends, kill them too. So no discrimination. So when he was placed on the throne as a king, naturally he was already inclined to be very independent and proud, so he became even prouder because he had now all these titles and positions. And here it mentions he started to insult great personalities. A not good thing to do, to start insulting anyone, especially great personalities. And so this is a danger that is present whenever someone, let's say, either by hard work or by providence, by chance, acquires a lot of wealth. He tends to become proud. And pride means that we think ourselves better than others, and whatever we say, whatever we think, it is the absolute truth. No one else should even dare question us. So this is the nature that he was manifesting. Of course, we read yesterday and the day before how because he was himself a very big thief and a very big rogue, as soon as he became the king, all the other rogues and thieves became quiet, meek and humble. The science of what we call, kshatriyahood, or the science of becoming a rājarṣis, is unknown today. And actually, sometimes people say, even sometimes devotees, they will say, it's not practical for us. Not possible for us. They were for bygone days. Those days are gone, bygone, bye-bye days. But actually, whatever is given in our Shastra is never actually becomes, we could say, no longer valid. Whatever is in Shastra, it is based on very, very deep sciences, very deep knowledge, that because we are in Kali Yuga and we are lacking in good intellect, we are lacking in good intelligence, therefore we cannot so easily understand. We cannot grasp. We cannot appreciate the the depth, of so many different arrangements, scientific arrangements, just like monarchy. Today you speak about monarchy, you mention the word monarchy to anybody, especially in America, they will look at you as if, where do you come from? Where have you been? They'll think you're crazy, actually. So therefore, in colleges and universities, to my knowledge, monarchy is not a subject matter of study. I mean, it might be part of history, yeah. All of these bad monarchs, all of these bad kings, because people only study. This is one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga. People only study the bad things that have happened or that are happening in Kali Yuga. Isn't it? I mean, who studies Bhagavatam? Bhagavatam is before Kali Yuga. All of the histories of kings, actually it mentions in the Bhagavatam, I forget which section, it gives a list of so many different kings. Then at one point it stops, and then I think it's one of the commentaries by our acharyas. The reason why we are no longer mentioning kings is because in Kali Yuga there are none. There are no good qualified kings. Huh?
Ninth canto there is more.
Yeah, ninth canto. So, I mean, but in modern day history, or in colleges and university, when they study history, that they'll only study when the first bad kings began. They don't know actually that there are good kings. Yeah, they only know the bad kings. So therefore monarchy is that's why 200 years ago, what is called the French Revolution. Did anyone study that at school, college? Yeah? There was what is called French Revolution. Naturally, it happened in France. French Revolution. And that was because at that time the kings had become so bad that there was a revolution, civil disobedience. People just revolted completely. I mean, that's the meaning of revolution. You revolt. Some of these features, it looks like maybe there might be another ongoing revolution right now. And therefore they rejected the whole concept of monarchy. And that's the beginning of the ideas of democracy. Why we should believe such a bad person, such a corrupt person. Better we decide amongst ourselves, vox populi, by vote. Even though people are not generally qualified to actually vote. So we'll read a few verses. So text number 5. Evam madanda utsikto nirankusha ivadvipaha karyatan ratham asthaya kampayan iva rodasi. Translation with no purport. When he became overly blind due to his opulences, King Vena mounted a chariot and, like an uncontrolled elephant, began to travel through the kingdom, causing the sky and earth to tremble wherever he went. Sounds like he was quite powerful, making the sky and the earth tremble. Text 6. Nayastavyam nadatavyam nahotavyam dvija kvachit iti nyava rayad dharmam bheri bheri goshena sarvashaha. Translation and purport. All the twice born brahmanas were forbidden henceforward to perform any sacrifice, and they were also forbidden to give charity and or offer clarified butter. Thus King Vena sounded kettle drums throughout the countryside. In other words, he stopped all kinds of religious rituals. Purport. What was committed by King Vena many years ago is at present being carried out by atheistic governments all over the world. This is 50 years ago. The world situation is so tense that at any moment governments may issue declarations to stop religious rituals. That's happening in China right now, actually. Eventually the world situation will become so degraded that it will be impossible for pious men to live on the planet. Therefore, sane people should execute Krishna consciousness very seriously so that they can go back home, back to Godhead, without having to further suffer the miserable conditions predominant in this universe. So Srila Prabhupada is comparing that situation at that time of King Vena with modern day developments, and therefore requesting everyone to become more serious in their Krishna consciousness, to avoid the kind of oppression. When Srila Prabhupada went to Moscow, and who else? Yeah, I was hearing recently one devotee from Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is, normally we speak about Europe like France and Italy, Spain. That's like, England. That's like on the west side. Eastern Europe is like we say Asia, Far East Asia. Like India is not Far East Asia. India is in Asia, but Cambodia, Thailand, this is Far East Asia, Indonesia. So what they call Eastern Europe. And Eastern Europe was oppressed. Many small countries actually became engulfed by the communist Soviet Union quite some years back. So the secretary at that time for Srila Prabhupada, Shamashundar Prabhu. So he was explaining how this was like in the early 70s. So Prabhupada expressed a desire, I would like to go to Russia. Because Prabhupada was traveling everywhere. And his desire naturally was to introduce Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. So I'd like to go to Russia. And then Shamashundar was telling, Russia. It was what we call the Iron Curtain. It was like totally communist. And for people from America, especially, to get a visa to go to Russia was like unthinkable. Somehow Prabhupada applied with a few devotees, he got a visa, and they went to Moscow. And so it was only, Prabhupada was mentioning, because they were, actually in those days, one was under what we call heavy surveillance, being watched, being monitored. And of course, they walked a little bit, but they mostly were staying in a hotel. They were not there for a long time, I think maybe 3 or 4 days. And that's when some arrangement was there to meet this Professor Katowski. And Prabhupada was making the observation that actually they have beautiful temples, not only in Russia, but in many of these eastern countries. Very beautiful temples. But actually they have guards. At that time, they had guards to prevent people from going inside. So Prabhupada was making the point that actually people in Eastern Europe, if we were to trace back, actually, I mean, the whole world used to be under the governance of Vedic culture. But soon after the Battle of Kurukshetra, there was a great disruption, naturally. And then 2000, I mean, for maybe up to 3,000 years in Kali Yuga, in many places people still followed Vedic culture. There's remnants of that. But when some 2,000 years ago, when Christianity became established, and then they had, again, if you study history, crusades. Crusades means, at that time, the kings, in the name of religion, they would go and conquer. Now you have to become baptized, you have to become like that. So many people in these eastern countries, they were like this since many, many years. I guess it's kind of karma, right? Karmic reaction. They were oppressed in so many different ways. But the natural tendency of the people was to actually be religious. So Prabhupada is making reference here that actually what King Vena did by going around and beating they had a system of making announcements, by beating drums or whatever. They would go to the market, some place, and they would make loud noise, beat drums, whatever, so everyone would come, and then they would take out a piece of paper. This is the order of the king. Hear ye, whatever. Everyone listen, and then from now on, no more going to the temple, no more chanting Hare Krishna, no more, so this is not new, and Prabhupada is making that connection with what is happening. Because they have, since many years, now they have what is called the Sustainable Development Growth. You know about this? Sustainable Development Growth Program. This is from the United Nations. How people should be, or what areas we should introduce and develop, for the next, it's like a, 10-year program, 20-year program, a little bit like India also used to always have these governments, their 5-year program. So a lot of this is minimizing religions or religious belief. And it is also very much straying away from basic principles of dharma. So therefore, one who doesn't read these literatures will not really be able to understand. So, so therefore, most people who are leaders in the world today, because they've not been exposed to the teachings of the Bhagavatam, they introduce all kinds of legislation and policies that are not Vedic, like abortion, for example, and so many other things that are not mentionable in Bhagavatam class. Yeah, I mean, not only abortion, but killing of cows. Now, one good thing I think everyone heard, possibly just a few days back, in UP. Yeah, and at least in one state, this one state in India is coming to its proper senses. So there's a ban on killing cows. You can be jailed and you can be fined. You know, yeah.
7 years.
Huh?
7 years in jail. 7 years in jail.
7 years. 7 years of forced meditation. Yeah, and I think there was one particular Muslim organization also supporting this kind of. There are a few. It's interesting here in India. Although majority are Hindu, there's of course quite a large percentage of Muslim, but there are some organizations here in India, although Muslim, they support cow protection. They support cow protection. Interesting. So we're just beginning to know a little bit more about this great personality called King Vena. You know, Hitler was a great personality. I mean, in one sense, he's still remembered. Yeah. So, any questions or comments on this? Yeah.
This is also a question coming from outside.
Okay.
Manuel Prabhu from Switzerland, he asked.
Okay.
And I just remembered from the Eastern Europe and all the references. In second canto of the Bhagavatam, there is one verse where it is said that even the sinful group of living entities can be delivered eventually if they follow Shastra.
Even the sinful groups of living entities can be delivered if they follow Shastra.
Yeah.
Thank God.
And the group, it's mentioned in the verse, are women, laborers, Shudras, mountaineers, don't know why.
What is that?
Mountaineers.
Mountaineers. Okay.
And Siberians.
And Siberians.
It's in the verse, not in the purport.
Oh, I see.
And Srila Prabhupada also explains a similar way in the purport. So, but the question Prabhuji, Manuel Prabhu had was why women is mentioned. Somewhat also comes in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita we were discussing last week. Parshuram Prabhu and all. Why
Yes.
Arjun is saying that only women get polluted, not men get polluted.
Because in the Vedic culture, proper understanding is that women by nature are weaker. We generally protect those who are weak, isn't it? We protect cows because they can be abused. We protect women because they can be abused. And therefore, there are different, it's like we also read in the Bhagavatam that the arrangement is that within householder life, a woman is meant to actually serve her husband. Actually, more than that, she's meant to worship her husband. And the idea is that if she is not completely, let's say, purified and still has to take birth, by serving her husband, she will take a higher birth. Higher birth means she'll become a man. It mentions in the Bhagavatam, if a woman thinks of her husband, she'll become a man. And of course the opposite is there. If a man thinks of his wife, he'll become a woman. Your choice is there. So we have to try and see things, and in our present context of Kali Yuga, it is not always easy, but to see things objectively. That there are different, okay, Pandita Samadarshinaha. Pandits, the learned, they see with an equal vision in that everyone is a spirit soul. At the same time, there are different gradations that are there, isn't it? We are fortunate in the human form of life to have the abilities that are not there in lower species. So even within human beings, there are different gradations. It's described in the Bhagavatam that there are, what is it? Huh?
400,000.
Yeah, 400,000 lakhs of different species. And there are some basic, again, this is a topic that is controversial in modern day society, and therefore one has to be cautious in addressing it. But there are some basic differences. Of course, there's differences between everybody. Even there's a difference between my right hand and my left hand. My two hands are not identical. You just go like this and see. Even within our body, we have differences. So there are natural differences that the Vedic culture recognizes, not to degrade or minimize or put down anyone, but simply recognizes the differences that are there, for example, between men and women. And of course, at the end of the class, to start talking on this topic is not the ideal time, because it's a topic that requires a lot of attention and needs to be addressed, with proper care and by proper reason as well. So Vedic culture, and this is part of the scientific nature and aspect of the Vedic culture, recognizes simultaneously that there are differences and also that there are, it's connected with our philosophy of simultaneously one and different, simultaneously the same and simultaneously different. So whether one is man or woman, one is a spirit soul. That is a common feature of both. And given proper circumstance and association, both can actually become elevated to be liberated from this material world. At the same time, there are differences. And that is why our Shastra is mentioning that all women should be married. Prabhupada even writes in the Bhagavatam that by the age of 16, women should be married. And by the age of 25, young men should be married. So why is that? Bhagavatam also mentions that a young girl should be protected by her father. when she's young. When she's a little older, she should be protected by her husband. And then when she's even still older and her husband has possibly taken sannyas or vanaprastha, then she should be protected by the elder children or the elder boys, elder son. So this means that actually women are meant to be not only protected, part of this protection means they are meant to be instructed by those individuals, not by others. That's why modern day system of education is wrong. It allows unnecessary mingling. And the whole Vedic culture actually is designed in such a way to restrict, very well understanding that this is the root cause. Unrestricted association between male and female, between men and women, boys and girls, results in all kinds of major problems in society. So that's one of the reasons, for example, that in education, women are meant to be taught by other ladies, that was a tradition, or they are meant to be taught by their husband, or by their father when they are young before they are married. They should not be taught by another person. This very simple, basic understanding is unknown today because it's not practiced. It's not even talked about, you see. So therefore, some of these simple, basic differences, for example, women, also it is explained, Prabhupada explains how leadership is not meant for women. Leadership, what is referred to as public leadership, although today we see that everywhere happening, and everyone thinks it's quite natural and normal. If we understand that women are meant to be protected physically, we can easily understand that women generally are weaker than men physically. If there is a fight somewhere, unless a woman has been trained in karate or martial arts, she's finished. She can't so easily protect herself. Anyways, this is a simple, crude example, and Shastra goes into more details as to what are some of the natural differences. But one of the major defects in modern day society, being promoted by, we don't have to mention, different organizations, etc., is that on the basis of artificial equality, everyone should have the same opportunity to take on any kind of position in society. This is artificial. Yeah.
Most devotees are able to understand this difference.
Most devotees will understand some of these differences.
But the controversial statements like this, women are in sinful group, or women only get polluted, these are very hard to explain.
I don't think there is statement about only women get polluted, everyone gets polluted, everyone,
Sinful activities, same thing, everyone can be sinful.
Yes. But when the Shastra says that women by nature have certain weaknesses, you see, they also have great qualities and great strengths. It's not that they just have weaknesses. Yeah. But we have to recognize some basic differences as explained in the Shastra and as observed actually in day-to-day life, isn't it? Yeah. So therefore, these topics can only be discussed when those who are discussing these topics are sober, very sober in discussing it and sticking to Shastra as well and to the Acharyas. Otherwise, what's the purpose of Shastra and Acharyas? There may be different things that we may have difficulty in understanding, but if it is something, either we accept Shastra and our Acharyas or we don't. And there are enough examples to demonstrate and support what is mentioned in the Shastra and by our Acharyas, isn't it? It's a very what is called topical subject matter in modern day society and within our own ISKCON society as well. And it can only be addressed when one is, first of all, knowing deeply, thoroughly about Shastra, and when one is very sober in such kind of discussions. Yeah. So we will close here for now. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai.